Okay, guys, so I decided to critique two clips that were released by TPUSA. And the first clip that I'd like to discuss, it says right here in the title, Charlie Kirk demolishes Marxist on CCP voting policy. And it's just ridiculous because I oppose both communism and capitalism equally. As you can tell, my YouTube channel is called Alt Monarchist. So I don't support either ideology completely. I don't really care about each ideology, two sides of the same coin. And so before anyone says anything, oh, why are you defending the communists? I'm not really defending, let's say, the communists. I don't want to, but there's a false claim that's being made here. Charlie Kirk demolishes the Marxist on CCP. Right here, this is false. After watching the clip, I did not see any demolishing from Charlie Kirk. So let's just play this clip to show you guys.
Is that China is a democracy, and they are going to make laws
Well, no, hold on a second.
based
Wait,
off of their
how are they
material
How are they a
conditions.
democracy exactly?
Are you kidding me? Aside from the fact that the central government has a 95% approval rating, which, by the way, before you're like, oh, but
Have you been to China?
No,
No,
of course.
Oh,
I
so you
haven't.
must be a subject matter expert.
I'm not.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So okay, so they're a democracy. Do they have senators or congressmen
What does it
in
take?
China?
Well, there's about 1,000 members of their National People's Congress, and then obviously they have a system of local people's
And
Congress.
so you don't think those elections
no,
are
I'm
rigged?
going to test you. What does it take to get on the ballot in China?
What is it? A lot of money, power, and influence, and killing the right people. So
Right here. Charlie Kirk basically is told that China's a democracy. He goes, oh, well, do they have any congressmen or senators? Because for some reason, in the mind of Charlie Kirk, a communist regime cannot have a parliament or something like a Congress or a Senate, right? That is the mind of Charlie Kirk. And the soy boy Marxist, who I don't want to defend, who is, again, an ideological enemy to me, just like Charlie Kirk is. But the soy boy Marxist has a comeback. He goes, oh, yeah, they have I think he said 1,000 people Congress. and then uh, and then Charlie Kirk decides to be all smug, and he says, hey, well, those elections are probably rigged. And yeah, and oh yeah, he also asked the soy boy, oh yeah, have you been to China? Well, the soy boy, if he was higher IQ, he would have asked Charlie Kirk, well, have you been to China? Okay, this whole argument, well, have you been to China, is not really a good argument. You don't necessarily have to visit a country to be an expert on that country. Yes, visiting that country, um, it gives you a wider perspective. You get to witness a lot more, but at the same time, like visiting a country itself doesn't really mean much because you could be a tourist. You could come for a month, hang out, and then leave, right? And again, you're probably visiting the more of the tourist attractions. So visiting a country itself doesn't really prove anything. Even if Charlie Kirk went to China, still does not make him an expert. So visiting or not visiting a country doesn't necessarily make you an expert, right? And that's not really an argument. But Charlie Kirk thinks that's an argument. So he says, oh, have you been to China? And the Marxist says, well, no, I haven't, but whatever. And so Charlie goes, oh, so you think you're an expert now? That is not a professional debate. You don't do professional debates like that. And then he asked the soy boy about their elections if they're rigged, and so well the soy boy asked him, well, like what, like how do you know, like do you know how people get on a ballot in China? And Charlie Kirk just says, oh, through I think he says what, corruption and getting people killed, right? And the big money, right? Well, everything that he said can be applied to the United States. We have rigged elections here, right? Do you really believe 2020? Okay, well, fine, that's up to you. But like, I still have questions about 2020, right? Also, you need big money here to win big seats, right? Uh, Depending on which congressional district you're running, you probably don't need lots of influence. But I mean, everything that Charlie Kirk accused China of doing is done right here in the United States. Charlie has no arguments, and so I don't understand why the soy boy did not come back with such counter arguments by not asking him, hey, well, everything you said, literally, like, don't you realize everything you said can be applied here? Well, yeah, but Charlie Kirk thinks that he demolished him by interrupting him. Because right here it says in this title, Demolishes. This title claims that he demolished the Marxist. I did not see any demolishing. The soy boy, as weak and as wrong as he is, he had good comebacks. He said, yes, they have a Congress. They are a democracy, right? They have elections, right? And Charlie Kirk simply um, came back with assumptions and accusations. Okay, so if you're making an assumption, you have to prove why. Well, you have to prove your sources for your assumption. Why do you assume such things, right? But Charlie Kirk does not do this. This is not a debate. This is a street argument. This is a argument that you have at a bar. This is an argument that you could have with your friends and family at dinner. This is not a professional debate. And Charlie Kirk did not demolish anybody. Charlie Kirk simply interrupted and was smirking and was laughing. And according to TV USA, that's enough to win a debate, apparently. You just have to accuse the other side of being bad, um, act all appalled and shocked, argue with them, like interrupt them, like don't let them finish a sentence, you demolish your enemy. Wow, such I don't know, big brain energy right here. Such an intellectual. Oh yeah, Charlie Kirk, you're so smart. You demolished this Marxist right here. There wasn't demolishing, and this is I don't know, fake news. Of course, it's being promoted by Turning Point USA, and who's in charge of Turning Point USA? Charlie Kirk. So it's Turning Point USA and Charlie Kirk are basically just one entity. It's one and the same. And Charlie Kirk is just promoting himself. He's got a big ego. And now let's watch the next clip.
We're just living planets, like Team Reality, Team Narnia.
So
Quite honestly,
how is our president?
Charlie Kirk, I resent you for giving away Narnia to the communists. That right there just discredits you. I'm kidding about that part, but seriously, Narnia is a good book, and so please don't give it away to the communists. That's not right. But anyways, moving on.
System better?
wait, hold on a second. For example, you got a lawyer. We have an independent judiciary. You have a jury of your peers. You know what a show trial is? What is a show trial?
Judiciary?
Hold on, what's a show trial?
What's a show trial?
Yeah.
I don't know. Ask Stephen Donziger.
Who was General Tukhachevsky that Stalin took up?
Stephen
Boom, right here. Charlie Kirk mentions Tukhachevsky, General Tukhachevsky. Actually, it's more like Marshal Tukhachevsky because Tukhachevsky was above a general's rank. And so that was not a show trial. Tukhachevsky did not go through a show trial. Tukhachevsky had a military tribunal. Why did he have a military tribunal? Because Tukhachevsky and many other generals and colonels and other officers, they were planning a military coup to overthrow the current government and to replace them with Trotsky and other Trotskyites. So it still would have been a communist regime, just a different flavor of communism, more bloodier and a lot worse than as bad as Stalin was. Trotsky was worse. And so Tukhachevsky was planning a military coup against the government. And he was being executed for literally crimes that he actually committed, which was treason. Now, Charlie Kirk is acting as if, an American general would not be punished for treason if he attempted something similar? Come on, seriously. Now, regarding show trials, he's probably referring to Bukharin. Now, Bukharin was Stalin's competitor, rival. Well, he used to be friends with him, but Buharin was a Trotskyite in the late 20s, early 30s. I don't remember the exact dates, but this is before Tukhachevsky, which Charlie Kirk does not really know who Buharin is because he mentions Tukhachevsky, conflates two completely different cases. So regarding the show trial that Charlie Kirk mentioned, well, we're talking about Buharin right here. Now, some historians debate whether or not it was a show trial, and um, but Buharin is what he's referring to. Buharin, he was another Trotskyite who was um, promoting Trotskyite ideas. He wanted Trotsky to come back, and Buharin himself was not this innocent person. Buharin himself promoted evil deeds against the Russian people, and so on top of that, he crossed the line when he was trying to promote Trotsky and trying to accuse Stalin of crimes against the state. So Stalin had a trial against him, right? And so this is the show trial that he's probably referring to. But General Tukhachevsky went through a military tribunal, not a show trial. Already, like if Charlie Kirk was debating, let's say, a smarter communist, he would have been crushed right here at this very moment. And I'm not even a communist. I am not a communist. I am a monarchist. And even I know such basic information, which Charlie Kirk does not.
Donziger, you think the United States doesn't do?
Oh, on top of that, I would like to remind you guys, speaking of lawyers, Charlie Kirk saying, "Oh, we got a lawyer." Well, the USSR also had lawyers. Oh, also, I'd like to add to the show trial thing. Charlie Kirk is trying to make it sound as if the USSR basically had show trials at every trial, right? He's trying to imply that every single trial was kind of like this. No, again, as I mentioned earlier, Tukhachevsky had a military tribunal that was not a show trial, and the so-called show trial was with Buharin, and that's probably that one incident with Buharin, and maybe there were probably some other incidents that were accused of being show trials, but we're not really sure if it was a show trial or a legitimate political purging, which could be a combination of both. But I'm trying to emphasize that Charlie Kirk does not know any history, and he's basically implying for his arguments. So he is trying to say, well, we got lawyers here, and over there they had show trials and no lawyers. And okay, stop trying to kind of conflate certain historical moments that happened in the USSR into like this everyday life of criminal proceedings in the USSR. The USSR had normal criminal proceedings. Well, I don't know if they're, let's say, normal. Fine, they're probably not normal, but they had criminal proceedings with lawyers, and they were not show trials. They're just basically trials like similar to other countries. Okay, and so this is what Charlie Kirk needs to do. He needs to study some more history before debating anybody on anything, and that is why he invites low IQ soy boys to defend communism, because he knows he could win.
Show trials. Look at Guantanamo. What are those?
Hold on a
people
second.
doing
What
in
you're trying to do
Guantanamo
is
Bay?
indict the entire Western legal tradition and conflate it with the Leninist, Stalinist. We're going to kill half the population we don't like.
No,
you could
what
have.
you're
Well, basically, like, has Charlie Kirk not heard of Vietnam, Iraq, Yugoslavia, Libya, Syria? Like, has he not heard of these countries? Or Afghanistan? Has he not heard of what we've done over there? Yeah.
What you're trying to do is you're trying to take a country that had to deal with a civil war, that had to deal with an invasion, and compare that to the United States today.
I'll close with this. You are defending genocide, which is quite honestly a remarkable thing to see in
hold
real
up.
time.
Stop right here,
You are
because,
defending
look,
genocide of Joseph Stalin
let's
and
be
Vladimir
very, very
Lenin,
clear.
the intentional destruction and killing of 65 million people.
This is what I'm talking about.
And no,
Like,
there's no middle ground in genocide. That's your opinion. We're just living on different planets, like team reality.
See, that's Charlie Kirk's whole debate style. He invites some weak person to debate him on a major topic. The weak person tries their best, in their own capacity to argue or debates Charlie Kirk. These people are trying to debate. Charlie Kirk is arguing here. because Charlie Kirk himself is not a professional debater. He is not a professional debater. He'll interrupt you and then try to talk over you and claim that he won. And also, he's conflating different historical events. He's using emotions in his arguments right here. And he got offended at the fact that the soy boy compared, oh, you're comparing us to Stalin and Lenin and all the millions of people that were dead. Okay, has Charlie Kirk not heard of what we've been doing during the Cold War? Has Charlie Kirk not heard of the Tuskegee experiments? Has Charlie Kirk not heard of MK Ultra experiments? Has Charlie Kirk not heard what our deep state has been doing? Has Charlie Kirk not heard of the invasion of Yugoslavia, the bombing of innocent civilians in Yugoslavia, the genocide perpetrated by the Clintons? Has he not heard of this? Has he not heard of the genocide committed in Iraq, perpetrated by Bush and Cheney? Has he not heard of this? Has he not heard of President Barack Obama committing genocide in Yemen, Libya, Afghanistan? No. It's just amazing how Charlie Kirk is trying to kind of do this whole let's ignore what we're doing and focus on these guys, and these are only the bad guys. And of course, he invites a weak soy boy to debate him because he knows that the soy boy is not so smart. He's not going to really defend his arguments in a very articulate way. And on top of that, Charlie Kirk knows that he's going to be perceived as the winner because all he has to do is laugh at his opponents, constantly interrupt them, be offended by what they have to say, get this emotional rise out of his audience, and boom, oh, I won, I defeated you. You are an evil person, and that's his whole debate style. You are an evil person, and boom, I win. I'm Charlie Kirk. That's it. That's my whole rant, and this my whole critique of these two clips. There's a larger version of this video. There's a whole debate that they've uploaded from TP USA, but it'll take forever for me to dissect that debate. But I'd say these two clips were very important because they're very deceiving. Like this clip right here says Charlie Kirk destroys. The previous clip said he demolishes. This one says destroys. He does not really destroy. He simply interrupts and gets offended that the soy boy said, "Oh yeah, well, what about us? What do we do?" And he goes, "Oh, how dare you compare us to Lenin and Stalin?" Like he's using emotions, no real arguments. So yeah, and it's just kind of sad. It's kind of sad that I, as a monarchist, have to basically step in and correct Charlie Kirk in history. I'm not trying to defend the communist soy boy, but I also, if I was a part of the communist team, I would basically have better arguments against Charlie Kirk because unlike the soy boy that he's arguing with, I speak multiple languages. I have more resources I could point to him, and I'd be like, "Well, did you read Klim Zhukov, right? Oh, you don't know who that is? Oh, sorry." Yeah, Charlie Kirk is not a professional debater, and Charlie Kirk is the reason why we are losing to the left. But Charlie Kirk is trying to portray himself as this intellectual, and yeah, okay, it's already past midnight here. I'm getting tired, but yeah, but those two clips just kind of got me so I don't know. I don't want to use the word triggered, but I just had to kind of skip sleep, and before going to bed, I just had to just point this out and critique Charlie Kirk. So if you're a low IQ Charlie Kirk follower, then yeah, you probably won't see what's wrong with his arguments because you probably don't know history, and you're probably relying on Charlie Kirk to give you some history. All right, well, that's it, guys. You have a good night.